Hey guys, in this video series, we're going to discuss three key aspects of water and water storage. Let's jump in. So as we jump in today, I really want to get into the discussion on water. Water is one of those critical resources that we use every day, from consumption for drinking water to purification for food and or just sanitation situations. Water is one of those critical resources, right? Especially in today's environment when we need to keep ourselves clean from the current pandemic situation that we're in. Water is a critical resource for cooking, be able to clean our food in preparation to be able to cook it before we consume it into our body. And then even just from a food preparation perspective, right? We use water in lots of different sources for preparing foods to be able to consume. So water is one of those resources that I think sometimes we just assume that it's always going to be there, right? That there's water filtration plants and all these things in place to provide that water to us. But unfortunately, as we've seen in the last several months and or years, that is not always the case. And so we've got to be really aware of the fact that there's people literally boiling water just to be able to consume it and use it for cleaning, drinking, and so forth. So I want to get into the next video series is really going to be on water storage, water catchment, and water purification filtration. For this first video, we're going to take a look at what are some options for water storage, because now while we've got clean, drinkable, and usable water, we should be looking at options of how we can get it and store it for those situations where we may need it in an emergency or backup scenario. So let's start with just an easy way to store some extra backup water for drinking. First, just go ahead and go to your local grocery store or Costco somewhere and pick up a couple extra packages of water bottles. Take those, put them under your bed, put them in a closet somewhere, so that they become a backup source for drinking water, whether again something happens to the local drinking water that gets contaminated. We've had several examples over the last several years of that happening in different states and locations where the drinking water, where they find out is no longer drinkable without going through purification methods. Again, this is just a simple and easy way to store some extra backup drinking water for those scenarios. Okay, another option is buying some of the larger Arrowhead or other brand water bottles for storage. We would recommend not going with the gallon milk jug type, and that's primarily because the jugs don't last as long from a storage perspective. Now there are some that are better than others. As you can see the difference in the tops of these, the ones on the right, they can actually be stacked on top of each other, and that's why I prefer that route, because they can again be stacked underneath a bed, in a closet corner, somewhere out of the way, that allows you to store it and not think about it. Another option would be to go with one of the 5-gallon storage jugs. We can grab these a little easier than we can some of our larger options when you start looking at storage and or the ability to move them to other locations. One of the things that I do like about these is they come with a spout that you can actually screw into those if you need to use that water in those scenarios as well. And I'll post the link down below for you to see, and you can look at those options. Now, one of the other things I do like about these is they are stackable. You can only go so many high, but at least it allows you the option to be able to save on space when you can stack these along a wall in a bedroom or along a wall in your garage. And we'll talk about some of those options as well. Another option would be to go with the WaterBricks. Now, these are a great option when it comes to portability. They're great from a size perspective when you've got smaller or younger children. If you had to carry these, they're only 3 gallons versus the 5 gallons. So again, sometimes they're easier to carry when you've got to be able to travel with them and those kind of things as well. They are a great option when it comes to more portability, storage, as they can lay flat. As you can see here, they can stack on top of each other for multiple layers. So it gives you options. Options is the key when it comes to water storage, water catching, and water filtration. Another option would be to go with a Coleman 5-gallon storage container like this. Those kind of scenarios where if there's no water at the campsite, we can carry 5 gallons of water with us. A lot simpler in this than having to try and bring in a bunch of other containers. It's not your ideal one. It's not stackable like the other 5-gallon containers that we discussed earlier. And I would recommend going with some of the other 5-gallon options if this is where you want to go. Now, if this is within your budget and that's all you can do at this point, storing this is better than having nothing. Another great option, of course, is your 55-gallon barrels. Now, there's the good and the bad to these. The good is they can store up to 55 gallons of water. The downside is, at weighing over 400 pounds, you're not going to move it very easily if you need to take it and go anywhere with it. Now, you can buy dollies for these that will allow you to move them around if you're trying to figure out where to put them within your garage or other locations. You can have a little more mobility for moving it when the time comes. But from a perspective of actually getting out of Dodge, this is not something you need to throw in the back of your truck like you can the 5-gallon jugs or the 3-gallon WaterBricks. When it comes to storing water in here, there's a couple other accessories we'd recommend having. You'd want to have a bung wrench like you see on here, and you'd also want to have some type of a siphon tube to be able to get to the water once you actually need to get access to it. Okay, so one last thing I'll mention is the option to use some leftover food grade type of containers like this. So whether it's the orange juice bottle like this or some leftover 2-liter soda bottles, they are an option. But here's some key things we have to do for these. You have to make sure that you rinse them and clean them out really well. I would suggest using some kind of a bleach solution. So just take a sink with some water, put a little bleach in it, and let them soak inside there, just to get a good cleaning of these bottles before you fill them with good clean water. And that helps to prevent from bacteria and other things growing within those bottles. And then also, as with anything in storage, you'll want to store those in a cool, dark area so that you don't have sunlight and anything penetrating those bottles, potentially creating or allowing bacteria to grow within those bottles as well. So these are just a couple of the storage options I wanted to provide today. There are many other options out on the market depending on your budget and your availability and opportunity to store water. The biggest thing is I would encourage you to find a way to store water for you and your family. Now, the recommendation is to have a gallon of water per person per day for an emergency situation. And that way you have drinking water and also water for food preparation and sanitation needs. So again, I would hope that we don't take for granted what it means to have clean water available to us at any given time. So that if and when that day might happen that we go to the tap and we don't have that availability to just go get drinking water or to go buy a bottle of water, that we actually have some backup water storage available for drinking and use for those emergency and backup situations. Thanks again for joining us for this video, guys. Hopefully it added value to you as you start thinking about options and ways for you to store water for you and for your family in those emergency situations. I will be putting together another video in the upcoming week that will talk about water catchment systems and also water purification and filtration options. Please hit that thumbs up and that like button. If it added value, please subscribe. We'll look forward to having you join us for upcoming and future videos on this and other topics.